The gaming industry, like any other, is built on hype. Hype for the next release, hype for the next update, and hype for the next sequel. To generate that kind of hype, game publishers and studios deploy trailers, all snazzy and lit up with epic music and nifty edits. Sadly, the final product doesn't always match that captivating reveal trailer. So let's go ahead and take a look at 15 noticeable cases of downgrades and questionable hype. No Man's Sky. Hello Games' No Man's Sky was a complicated case. With its initial reveal, the developer unveiled large alien creatures and a fairly dense planet teeming with wildlife. Enormous fleets and epic space battles were teased in screenshots leading up to the launch. In comparison, the final game felt kind of empty. Those massive animals and epic space battles were almost nowhere to be seen. Procedural generation could be blamed for some of that, but No Man's Sky did have some pretty stunning vistas. They were just far away from what the trailers had promised. Fortunately, Hello Games has been heavily supporting the game after launch, and has now given us incredible forests, the potential to build massive bases, and vastly improved visuals overall. Watch Dogs. Initially revealed at E3 2012, Watch Dogs promised some pretty heavy alpha effects and lighting along with a busy world full of NPCs and traffic. Wind even interacted realistically with different objects like Aiden's coat. However, as time progressed, the game changed significantly. Reflections and lighting were toned down, there were less NPCs overall. While you can somewhat see a resemblance to that initial reveal in the PC version on Ultra settings, Watch Dogs at launch was significantly downgraded over the years. Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege. The journey of Rainbow Six Siege from the scrapped Patriots to the current competitive multiplayer shooter has been interesting to say the least. The 2014 gameplay reveal showcased a tactical shooter with an emphasis on real-time environmental destruction. Lighting and reflections, even in the nighttime, were excellent. When Rainbow Six Siege launched, it looked significantly toned down, though the environmental destruction was still on point from a gameplay perspective. Let's not even talk about how the hostages look now. But hey, at least we ended up with a great competitive shooter, one that Ubisoft has supported and overhauled heavily throughout the years. Dark Souls 2. How Dark Souls 2 suffered throughout its development cycle is another story entirely. One thing can be summed up concisely though, its visuals underwent massive changes before release. The overall tone may come across as warmer now, but the initial April 2013 gameplay demo had way more details in character models, particle effects, environmental textures, lighting, well, you name it. While we're happy that From Software salvaged and released what was a pretty good game, Dark Souls 2 could have been very different. Aliens Colonial Marines. Ah yes, a game whose demos were so different from the final product that consumers actually sued Sega and Gearbox for being misleading. Aliens Colonial Marines in 2011 wasn't just different from the 2013 release, it might as well have been a different game altogether in terms of atmosphere and lighting. Even the E3 2012 demo had superior effects and illumination, to say nothing of capturing the Alien universe's tone better. Of course, considering the mess that development was, Gearbox blaming this developer and that, maybe the end result isn't all that surprising. White Knight Chronicles. Looking back at the first trailer for White Knight Chronicles, Level 5 spiffy RPG kind of puts into perspective how phony it was in terms of animation and cinematography. Nevertheless, we all wanted to believe that it was something special. When newer trailers began dropping in 2008, the game started to look weirdly different. Character details felt kind of off, but environmental textures and lighting had clearly suffered throughout development. Tom Clancy's The Division. The initial design of The Division looked pretty darn cool, with more emphasis on survival, seamless open world, and PvP design and gorgeous details. Plus, Brooklyn was an actual city and not just a tutorial section. Unfortunately, The Division suffered downgraded texture details, weather details, alpha effects, environmental object textures, and so on. This was most likely to account for the game's shared world, online nature, and to ensure smooth performance. Perhaps more intriguing is how the gameplay changed, shifting more towards being a looter-shooter with a dedicated zone for PvEvP. Mass Effect Andromeda. The first trailer that showed any hint of gameplay in Mass Effect Andromeda occurred at E3 2016. The game looked pretty stunning, and it was debatable as to whether it would retain that magic, but hey, this was BioWare. What could go wrong? The PlayStation Meeting 2016 footage looked alright, though it was fairly short. But when the gameplay world premiere debuted at the Game Awards 2016, it was obvious the visuals had taken a tumble. The poor optimization and graphical glitches at launch did the game no favors either. Atlas. Another world reveal for the Game Awards, this time in 2018, was Atlas. From the developer behind Ark Survival Evolved, Atlas came across as a massive pirate game with fantastical elements like dragons and hydras. And over 40,000 simultaneous players in the same world? Well, it sounded too good to be true, and lo and behold, Atlas's servers were a mess at launch. Performance, like Ark for the longest time, continues to be shoddy even on high-grade systems. The gameplay loop that the trailer featured was there, but only after hours and hours of menial grinding and scavenging, and all of that could be undone by random NPC ships or other players. Fun. Anthem. Of all the games on this list, BioWare's Anthem decently resembles its E3 2017 debut gameplay trailer. Sure, the world doesn't look as busy in terms of wildlife or as sharp with environmental details and textures. In fact, huge parts of the environments appear to have been removed. Nor do the characters look as good, and for that matter, even the javelins don't look nearly as good. But hey, it's still a very good looking game for those with a beastly PC configuration. We'll be real though, the visuals are the least of BioWare's worries right now. Crackdown 3. Crackdown 3 sounded like a pretty big mess in terms of development, with several studios involved like Sumo Digital, Regent Games, CloudGen, Ruffian Games, and Certain Affinity. However, the initial gameplay trailer at Gamescom 2015 looked like a mess in a good way. The multiplayer promised cloud-based destruction on a hereto unseen scale, and the campaign offered the chance to take down a massive crime empire in your own way. The final game has since been compared to a PS3 title's graphics, and the cloud-based destruction in multiplayer is nowhere near as impressive as it was hyped to be. So that happened. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. CD Projekt Red would deny as much at the time, but it was obvious that The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt at launch had been downgraded from its E3 2013 trailer. Alpha effects like smoke and fire looked way worse, clothing textures and details were worse, and so on. For what it's worth, the final game still looks pretty good, and character faces and expressions actually look improved from the E3 2013 trailer, but it was visually lacking in many ways. Killzone 2. Killzone 2 was revealed in E3 2005 and blew everyone away with the fidelity of its visuals. Fun fact, it wasn't actual gameplay and wasn't running in real time on the PS3 like Sony's Ken Kutaragi said. The demo was pre-rendered and meant for internal use rather than showing off the power of Sony's then next-generation console. Fallout 76. Having played an ample amount of Fallout 4, we can confidently say that Fallout 76 did look slightly better. Key emphasis on slightly, especially after you've got around the graphical glitches, performance issues, stuttering, and numerous bugs. Bethesda has addressed many problems since launch, but it's interesting to go back and hear director Todd Howard claiming that the game had all new rendering, lighting, and landscape technology with 16 times more detail at E3 2018. Honestly, the footage speaks for itself in these cases. Far Cry 3. That infamous cutscene with Voss and Jason Brody may seem like the game has been graphically improved in its final state versus the initial E3 2011 reveal, especially considering the facial details, but no, as it turns out, environmental textures, weapon textures, even the reflections on water just don't look as snazzy. Optimization is probably the key culprit here, but it's funny how long the history of iffy trailers from Ubisoft really is. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from Gaming Bolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.